assume that you actually need to go out and buy a Samsung smartphone. Where do you get this? You get it at a retail shelf. And what kind of a retailer is it? It's not a retailer who sells the soap and the detergent, but it's a specialty store, let us say a Croma or a Sangeeta. So you walk into the store and decide to buy a Samsung smartphone. How is this phone again reaching this shelf of the store? Probably again through a distributor and through the distributor's distribution center. The complexity here arises from the fact that these Samsung smartphones are not made or manufactured in India. Yes, we all know Samsung is a Korean brand, but much like everything else, 90% of the Samsung phones are probably manufactured in China. So these phones have reached your Sangeeta store shelf all the way from China. So potentially, who could be the multiple participants involved in this? There's the manufacturing plant in China. There could be a distribution center or a storage space attached to the manufacturer's plant where the completed or completely manufactured cell phones are stored. Subsequent to the manufacturer's distribution center, product needs to move from there to an exit port in China. There is some participant who is physically moving the product to. Subsequent to the exit port in China, somebody needs to actually comply with all the export regulations of China, ensure that the product is loaded onto some carrier, maybe an ocean container or an aircraft or whatever it is, and somebody needs to manage all these processes and ensure that these phones safely reach the rest of the world, including India. So there are other participants there with additional responsibilities too. So now these phones have reached the entry port in India, let us say Chennai. Again, there are a bunch of import restrictions that could apply and regulations that do apply, and we need to ensure that these regulations are complied with, that the necessary customs clearances are done, and only then the product brought in. And now the product is ready for distribution within the rest of India. So the distributor picks it up, and one specific unit of that which you have bought also has ended up on the specific retailer's shelf. So we have seen the complications involved when the supply chain that we speak about is actually global. Similarly, we are not done. If you look at the manufacturer himself, a cell phone being a complex piece of assembly probably has a lot of components which are manufactured outside of Samsung. So it is very, very likely that there are critical sub-assemblies within this phone which are coming into the Samsung manufacturing plant in China from the rest of the world. They could be from Taiwan, they could be from Japan, and some of the raw materials might even be making its way into the Chinese manufacturing plant from India. So all the issues that we spoke about in terms of export and import when crossing an international boundary apply equally to all these subcomponents and raw materials that need to flow into the manufacturing plant. So now we have looked at a cell phone supply chain which has a lot more players and could get a lot more complex. So we have looked at two different types of supply chains, and the two critical parts that we would want to emphasize again out here is the number of players involved in getting any product into your hands, that is the participants, and the nature of interactions between all these different participants, which is the process.